The first individual who was charged in connection to the Capitol riots has been found guilty of all charges. The name of the individual here is Guy Reffitt, and it sets the tone for the rest of the trials moving forward involving Capitol rioters. Now, Reffitt decided against taking a plea deal, and his wife is actually still supportive of that decision. We'll get to her in a little bit, but what was he found guilty of? Well, apparently he is not one of the individuals who managed to storm inside the Capitol. However, this Texas man and also member of the Three Percenters was a supporter of Donald Trump, of course, and he did go to the Capitol on January 6th. He was charged with 5 counts, all of which he was found guilty of, including wanting to obstruct a congressional certification of the 2020 presidential election. Of course, that was the whole point of these riots. Transporting guns to DC, carrying a Smith & Wesson handgun onto the restricted grounds of the Capitol, interfering with Capitol Police, protecting the Upper West terrace of the Capitol, and also obstructing justice by threatening his son and daughter when he returned to Texas. By the way, his own son testified against him in this trial, and it is, it's really depressing. Like reading the details of the story, it's depressing. This is a guy who clearly, committed the crimes that he has now been convicted of. He is not a good person, but the damage that's done to his family, to his children, it really is heartbreaking. Reffitt has not been sentenced yet. He will be sentenced on June 8th. The maximum sentence, by the way, for the most severe of his charges, which again, he's been convicted of, obstruction of Congress, carries 20 years, a potential 20 years behind bars. So he is very likely to spend quite a bit of time behind bars. And the week-long trial ended with the jury deliberating for just 4 hours before finding him guilty of all charges. I have more details, but before we get to that, Cenk.
Yeah, now remember, there's someone who already made a plea deal with the prosecutors. And he looks like he's going to get about 7 years for some serious sedition charges. So this is as serious as it gets. I mean, they're not going for just trespassing and assault. They're talking about trying to overthrow the government. That is a hell of a crime, right? And so in this case, let me give you some of his quotes. Reffitt said, "I'm taking the Capitol with everyone else. I think we have the numbers to make it happen." So he was literally trying to take the building. And now, look, guys, was it going to work? Could they hold the building? And then they're now the official government? No, of course not. That's absurd, right? But that doesn't mean they weren't trying to do it. They have said on tape that that's what they were trying to do. The fact that they're unintelligent doesn't excuse their criminal behavior, right? And by the way, not so unintelligent, could it have worked? Well, how would it have worked? Remember, at the same time, there's a second branch of radicals named Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, and Donald Trump, and they hatched a plan to institute fake electors instead of the real electors from the swing states that Biden won. So as those guys are holding the building, the idea was Pence never got to certify the election, because remember, they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence" as they were walking in. Trump riled them up to do that. So you go murder the vice president, he can't certify the election. You have the building, you put in the fake electors, then actually you could do a coup, as long as that fake elector scheme worked. So they were really trying to overthrow the United States government. And this was the dream of these militias for all of this time. And then you put in a white supremacist government that says, no, we're not doing democracy anymore, it's martial law, and white people are in charge, and that's it, period. And everybody else is going to go back to being oppressed. Here's something else he said. Reffitt later told fellow, I'm quoting Washington Post here, told fellow Three Percenters in a Zoom call played in court that police, quote, "stopped me but fired up the crowd. They couldn't be stopped after that. We all had weapons but never fired a single round." So he's bragging about having weapons. He led the charge. That's what prosecutors said and convicted him on, okay? And he broke through the police lines, even though he didn't make it at that moment. That energized everyone to push through those barricades and actually make it into the building. And the person who admits that is Guy Reffitt himself. So they had him completely on all of the evidence.
So he has been behind bars since January of 2021. His own son, Jackson Reffitt, turned him in and did talk about his father's involvement in the 3 Percenters. So I do want to go to his wife, right? Because this might send a message to the rest of the rioters who are facing trial. And many of them have been charged, some with far more serious charges than others. However, he refused to take a plea deal, as I mentioned, and it did not work out for him. He has been convicted of all 5 counts. And he is very likely to spend quite a bit of time in prison as a result of these convictions and as a result of him refusing to take a plea deal. Does his wife regret this decision? The answer is no. Nicole Reffitt told reporters outside of the courthouse after the jury had convicted him that the fight's just begun. So she remains undeterred, okay, which is pretty terrifying, and encouraged other January 6 defendants to follow her husband's choice to not go to trial and not take plea deals from the government. She says, and I quote, "Do not take a plea deal. They want us to take a plea. They are making a point out of Guy, and that is to intimidate the other members of the 1-6ers, and we will fight together." So she's giving people, I think, pretty bad legal advice, but good. I mean, if they want to take that advice, have at it. But to me, the thing that really stands out is the lack of remorse, how unapologetic she is, how she continues to support what her husband did. Her husband threatened to kill his own children, shoot his own children. I mean, these people are so incredibly brainwashed, and like they genuinely think that they're doing something to protect American democracy, even as they're trying to overturn the results of a legitimate election.
Right, I'm gonna give you the last couple of things here because they were armed and dangerous. So they had a cache of weapons in a hotel room that they were going to go and access. And he had brought an AR-15 style rifle, a semi-automatic handgun, helmet, body armor, radio, flex cuffs, etc. Speaking of the cuffs, co-conspirator is Rocky Hardy, and Hardy testified that Reffitt gave him zip ties and told him they were, quote, "in case we need to detain anybody." So they were planning to take hostages, including some of the top politicians in the country. Hardy was also part of the Texas 3 Percenters. He also went to the Capitol. He testified that they both brought firearms and ammunition to the Capitol and to DC and were ready to use them in self-defense, agreeing that, quote, "it's better to be tried by a jury of 12 than carried out by 6. Well, mission accomplished. He just got tried by a jury of 12, and guilty is the verdict.
And just to give you the context in which he threatened to murder his own children, it was when he suspected that his own children might turn him in to the FBI, and he essentially threatened to shoot and kill them if they did that.
Yeah, because these are the guys who claim to be moral. The right wing my whole life has claimed to be moral, when in reality, they're the most immoral people I have ever met. Who would threaten to murder their own kids so that they could kill politicians?
He said, and I quote, "traitors get shot."
Okay, sick person. I'm thrilled that he's behind bars. And now they should get the real co-conspirators. That's Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, who brag about it on the radio, who wrote a book about it, how they were planning to destroy our democracy. Don't just get a bunch of militia guys and think you did your job. Yes, I'm thrilled about this, that's good, but go get the top honchos. But when it comes to the elites, man, prosecutors get scared. Oh my God, if we charge Steve Bannon, then Fox News would be mad at us. And they'd call him a martyr and they'd make up conspiracies about the deep state. Well, he's the one who was bragging about how they were gonna overturn the election. So go get the guys who actually planned it. So these were the foot soldiers. Bannon and Navarro were the generals, and they should definitely be arrested. Otherwise, the rule of law doesn't mean anything. And last thing is on politics. Democrats, I know they focus on January 6th. I know they're trying to do it in their own ways, but put it on the entire Republican Party. They encourage this. Instead, they're always like, I mean, not the whole Republicans. Like just these little, but it's the militia. And we're, if
They're afraid of the tables being turned. I think that's really what it is. I think that members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, never ever want to hold Republican criminality accountable. Because who knows, they might be concerned about their own criminality. I don't know. It's especially true when it comes to potential financial crimes.
No, they have a much bigger allegiance to fellow elites. That's why it's easy to get the militia guys, because they're not in the elites, right? But they have much more kinship with elites like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. They think there, but for the grace of God go I. If I put them in jail for breaking the law, what if they put me in jail? Whoa, no. Nobody ever touches the elites, right? And so that's why the real criminals that try to do a coup in America will probably get away with it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.